It's time to sit back, relax, and listen to Conversations with Joan. Conversations with Joan will inspire, motivate, and empower you. Live your best life now. Listen, learn, think, and decide. And now, here's your host, Joan Herman.
Good evening. Happy Sunday. Welcome to Conversations with Joan. I'm your host, Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you had a great weekend. For the next hour, we're going to start your week on a positive note. I am so excited to be coming to you tonight from our new home, AM 970 The Answer. This is a fantastic station that promotes stimulating talk, and I'm happy to be part of their powerhouse lineup. Conversations with Joan will be airing right here in this time slot every Sunday night at 10 p.m. Each week, I will speak with some of the most inspirational and influential people in the world, people who are making a difference, people who are changing lives. We will focus on important topics that impact your life, from health and wellness to professional development to personal well-being. Thought leaders and experts will join me to share their insights, tips, and strategies so you can thrive. It's my goal to help you live your best life now. Thank you for taking time for yourself, and thank you for letting us be a part of your life. Now, let's start talking. My first guest today, Mark Nepo, teaches about the importance of community and cultivating connectedness in order to live more enriched lives. According to Mark, despite the hardships always present, we need each other more than ever, and we're more together than alone. Mark is the author of the new book, More Together Than Alone, Discovering the Power and Spirit of Community in Our Lives and in the World. Mark is the author of 20 books, including the #1 New York Times bestseller, The Book of Awakening. He traveled the country with Oprah Winfrey on her The Life You Want tour and has appeared several times on Super Soul Sunday. Mark will be appearing this October at the New York Open Center. Welcome, Mark. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. It's great to be with you.
So, Mark, you just wrote a book that's entitled More Together Than Alone, and in it you discuss the power of community in our lives and in the world. In today's world, Mark, sometimes it feels like things are going crazy. I was speaking with a friend of mine the other day, and she remarked that it feels like the world is upside down and nothing is making sense to her. And I know when I feel that way, and I'm sure others do as well, we tend to isolate and withdraw and sometimes even hide. So why is community so important, especially when life doesn't make sense?
Well, that's a wonderful question, and I feel it too in the age that we're in. And I think one of the things as I've looked throughout history and cross-culturally for all the different stories and when we've worked well together is that just as the sea, waves crest and then they dip into a belly and then they crest, there have been periods in history where we have pushed each other away and periods when we've come together. And it seems so much goes back to the age-old and really timeless choice between fear and love. And, one of the things that's so powerful is that just when we're feeling like we want to retreat, I think we're challenged to be more present than ever and to lean back in, because so much depends on what every single person does. Mother Teresa defined courage as doing small things with love. And if you look at, so let's take a minute and use a biological analogy from the body that, a body is roughly considered healthy if there's just one more healthy cell than toxic. We'd like a lot more to be healthy, but as long as there's just one more healthy cell than toxic, the body has a chance. And if we look at humanity as a global body and every soul is a cell, then every conversation like we're having, every gesture of kindness, every question we ask, every helping someone when they fall down is strengthening the immune system of humanity. Another thing that I think is so powerful is, back in the Middle Ages in Europe we learned in school, they were the Dark Ages. and not much learning was happening, and there was a lot of fear, and there was a lot of, didn't have all the technology, but a lot of the same things of pushing each other away and repelling each other out of fear. And during that time, only 10% of Europe was literate, and 10% of the population kept literacy alive for 200 years or more so that we could still learn and grow. And today, that's why it's so important that each of us, that we come together, that we face our fear, that we acknowledge, yes, this is a strange time, things don't seem to be aligning, because it's incumbent on us to keep the literacy of the heart alive.
What's so hopeful about what you just said is that history will show us that although things don't seem to make sense today, there have been periods of time in the past when things didn't make sense, and we got through those and we were able to thrive, and we will again now.
Well, yes, and one of the things is, because I, like everyone else, have been very upset and by so many of the things that are happening, which seem to me to be below politics, that it's not about left or right, it's about decency, it's about compassion and helping each other. It's made me reflect. I have a chapter in the book called The Two Tribes, and it made me reflect and look back throughout history and imagine all the way back in cave times. Imagine when the first two people came upon each other, that they didn't realize there was anyone else, and maybe one person came to the mouth of a cave and they saw each other. They went, "Oh my God, who are you?" Mm-hmm. Well, I imagine that one in the cave looked at his other and said, "You're different, go away," out of fear. And I think that was the beginning of the go away tribe. And depending on our level of fear and how we let it run our lives, then throughout history we've had periods of time where the go away tribe has said, I can't trust you'll go away, so I've got to put you where I can watch you. I'll put you in a camp or a ghetto or a refugee center. And in the worst periods where fear has been so overcoming, we've had terrible periods of genocide where people have said, well, I can't trust you'll be where I put you. I'm going to make you go away. But on the other side, the person who saw them from the outside said, "Oh, you're different. Come teach me." And that was the beginning of the Come Teach Me tribe. And when we have recognized that, oh, thank God you're not me, together we will be more together than alone. And, Plato was of that side, and he said, we're born whole, W-H-O-L-E, but we need each other to be complete. And all the spiritual traditions talk about this in one way or another. In the Christian tradition, it's where two or more are gathered. In the Jewish tradition, God is known as an indwelling presence that, like a seed, that unless it's watered, it doesn't sprout. That doesn't come out of us except through relationship. So in the best of the Come Teach Me tribe, we've had the greatest periods and stories of enlightenment and where we've worked well together and kind and compassionate times. But the catch here, Joan, is that we belong to both tribes. And depending on the level of fear I wake up with tomorrow, I'm devoted to the Come Teach Me tribe. But I could be thrown into fear tomorrow by something that happens, and I'll need you to remind me, no, wait, we are more together than alone. This is a challenge every day for each of us.
Mark, in our world today, technology brings us together. It's so much easier to connect with other people. In one way, technology makes the world very small. You can type a few words, hit send, and you're in touch with someone thousands of miles away. So we're connected, but I'm not sure that we're connected in the way that's important. I think, let's use Facebook or texting. You can type something to someone, be anonymous, click send, and then go about your day. Whatever that message is that you send, you don't need to look at the person's face when he or she receives it, or look into that person's eyes, or see the tears. It's so easy to hurt another and not even let it impact you. What do you believe technology has done to our relationships?
Well, I agree with you. It's very interesting because technology is a tool. It's inert. There's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't have values. It doesn't make us do those things where we're separated. We do that. And so the way that I hold it is that if we, and this has been throughout history, because listen, we're able to talk today through technology. I welcome it. It's wonderful. But it is not a substitute for what you've talked about looking each other in the eye, and for the connection and the deep listening and holding that has always been necessary in human interaction. So what is this about? Well, I think if we don't meet the outer world with an inner life, it doesn't mean we have to have things figured out, but we don't meet the outer world with our authenticity and our vulnerability and our truth, then the way water will fill an empty hole, then technology and everything else from the outside will fill us by default. So if I'm not present with you, really present with you in our call, then technology will take over. The traits of it, I won't be where I am. Things will be happening in more than one place at the same time. I'll be moving too fast. So when I'm looking on TV, and I see, technology is wonderful in that, in Lincoln's time, when he gave his second inaugural address, which has become such a famous one, it took 6 weeks for the Pony Express to carry it on a piece of paper to California.
Right.
We are blessed that today we can see what's happening around the world, good, bad, everything, but then it happens 45 times in an hour, and we get desensitized. And our job, I feel my job is, I don't need 45 times, I need once. So I need to put my heart out and open and really receive that what I'm seeing is real and happening, and let it into my heart, and then be with that and digest it and internalize it, and not stay on the surface and go back and see it 45 times, where it will drain me of my capacity to feel it. So it's, how do I respond to this?
Mark, how do you go about doing that? How do you advise when people are literally addicted to their phones and technology? How do they break that cord?
Well, I think, and again, I don't have answers, and I struggle, even though I struggle with, I myself, it's so easy to get addicted to it, always looking. I think two things that happen for me that I think are important that I try to practice is remembering to slow down, because things that matter take time. And I don't need to move at the speed of all the tools. The tools need to serve our humanity, not the other way around. So this is what I mean about meeting the outer life with an inner life. I need to slow down and move at the pace of what is real. What do I mean by that? I mean that a practice that I try to do is to try, when my mind and heart and body are moving at the same pace, all of a sudden everything starts to have that extra glow. The miracle of life starts to appear again. And then my mind races and I fall out of it. But the practice is to bring my mind and body and heart. You can't stay there all the time, but when I am moving too fast, or I find myself being pulled into these things of technology and other things, what can I do to come back to the pace of what is real? And what can I do to open my heart and lean in and listen? So that, because what happens in our modern world globally is that everything pushes us to this false assumption that life is other than where we are. Oh, it's over there. If I could just get over there, if I could just have that relationship or that job or live in that place or look like that person or behave like that. And that is life-draining, because the truth, all the spiritual traditions speak of it in different ways. There is no there. There's only here. And so by listening and and making a practice of listening and opening our heart and returning to the pace of what is real, our eyes and ears and heart slow down enough to open up again and to take things in.
You know, Mark, from doing this work, I have the opportunity to go out and meet so many people as you do. And what I've seen is that there just seems to be more and more people that have this empty space within them. It's like they're searching for the meaning of life. They're missing this inner happiness and joy. And I'm not sure if it's the result of the fast-paced life that we live. What is it that you think is happening in society today?
Well, I think that, people today are facing the same things we've always faced. I think some of the pressures are very different because of modern times. And so, I think that the technology and technology is inert. It's a tool. It's what we do with it. There's nothing wrong. I don't want to give up the technology by which we're talking right now, But technology is fast. It is split focus, and it always kind of makes you think life is other than where you are. And it allows us to connect like this, but it also, if we're not present, it encloses us in isolation. So you add that on top of the normal journey that every person has to go to face life, to work with what's in the way, to take the risk to open your heart. And yes, you might get hurt, you probably will at some level, but then our soul comes fully in the open and we can embrace life. So it's almost like there's an added bark around us, like bark on a tree, from the modern world and how fast and how crowded so this is why there's so much emphasis, I think, today on stillness, on being quiet, on slowing down, so that we can realize and remember that there's nothing between us and life, wherever we are. So one practice that's very simple but very challenging is whenever we're confused, whenever we're feeling empty or out of touch, is to just stop wherever we are and to hold nothing back, to breathe and open our heart so we can see what's before us in all its beauty. And to wait, have the quiet courage to wait, because you may stop and look, and then you go, well, nothing's happening. Well, stopping is not the same thing as opening.
It's definitely time for all of us to have a wake-up call, because we're walking around stressed out, we're making ourselves sick, and studies show that when people are involved with others, when they're intimate and they're part of a community, they're happier and they're healthier. But when they're isolated, they're stressed, they suffer from disease, and they die earlier. So it really is time for all of us to wake up.
Well, it's just one of the things I found in doing all this research about community throughout different cultures is that, the word idiot, we understand idiot as that's a derogatory term. It means you're stupid. It means you're not paying attention. Well, that's not what the word originally meant. I was amazed to discover it comes from a Greek word, idiotes, and it means someone that is so isolated they collapse onto themselves. It originally meant someone who pushes themselves away from community and relationships. So being an idiot was a sad, isolated position, not a stupid one.
Mark, we've been talking about the benefits to us as an individual from community, but when we're engaged and we're intimate with others as part of a community, how does society benefit as a whole?
Oh my goodness. Well, society benefits because, and again, let's go back to a biological metaphor. In the bloodstream, you can't have a healthy bloodstream unless you have healthy cells. And the other side is that if you don't have a bloodstream, veins and arteries to carry it, no matter how healthy the cells are, there's no place for them to live. So we need each other. We need each other to, and this is so interesting that in different cultures, there are different strengths, and we need not to choose one culture over another, but to learn from the strengths of each. So in this regard, one of the strengths in the Western world has been, over the last 200 years, the development of the individual, of self-reliance, of independence. But the shadow of that is manifesting in all the things we've been talking about: self-centeredness and self-interest. And now let's move to Africa. In the African continent, their inborn sense of community is so strong, and this was another thing I was amazed to learn, that in all the African cultures and tribes and languages, there's no word for orphan, because there's no need for the word. If parent dies, the child is automatically cared for by the community. So they don't even have a need for that word. Mm-hmm. So that's amazing and so powerful and wonderful. And so we need the best of all the different cultures and traditions to help us wake up and return to discover in this sense that, and I think that we are more together than alone, because great love and great suffering remind us that we need each other. You know, this is one of the deep paradoxes of life, that no one can live your life for you, but no one can do it alone.
And it's interesting because we open this conversation talking about how the world doesn't make sense today and we feel so divided. But the answer, as you're saying, is within us. By being together in love and compassion and kindness and understanding, each one of us can heal that division. We can heal what we're feeling, what we're complaining about. We have power to do this.
Yes, we do. And the power comes from being who we are, telling our stories, listening to the experience of others, not their opinion, and asking for those stories, because stories are medicine. They root us. You know, one of the things, this is another great community metaphor from the natural world, is aspen groves. Now, an aspen grove can be hundreds of square miles. But the amazing thing about aspen trees is above ground, they're obviously individual trees. But below ground, they share one root system. That root system could be square miles wide and long. And so they're interconnected. So the health of one tree depends on the other. And so the same thing with human beings. You know, we're individual people, and we have our individual dreams and work and problems and struggles. But under the ground, in the invisible ground of spirit, humanity has one interrelated root system. So if I'm diseased, you need to care, not just because you're kind, but because it's going to affect your roots too.
That's right. And, you know, Mark, in your book, you write, the first strength of character for a leader is to assess the needs of the community and to find the means by which to enhance everyone's capacity. When we hear those words, we tend to think of leaders of countries or a manager of a company, someone that we perceive to be an authority. But these words apply to every one of us. It's up to each one of us to lift up another, to enhance another person's capacity.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that each of us is a leader when we are authentic in our soul. And what's so amazing, and I learned stories throughout history here, that we are more than what is done to us. We do not have to continue, both personally, interrelationally, and societally, patterns that we have inherited. You know, and a great example of that is Lorenzo Medici, who really was one of the people who helped start the Renaissance in the 1400s. He was the heir of a very rich banking family, and when he was in his 20s, he experienced unbelievable brutality because in the church in Florence, Italy, amidst hundreds of people, his father and his brother were assassinated, and he was wounded. It was an awful, awful experience, and his grief and everything. He could have responded becoming as brutal, but instead he said, "I want to take my grief and try to build a better world." And he used the money he inherited to create the Medici Circle, where he gathered the greatest minds and artists of his time and created what was known as the Medici Garden. And in that garden was one of the geniuses of the age was a young man, Pico, who learned 23 languages by the time he was 20. And he was reading everything he could, and what he wanted to do was see if there was one common value or theme in all the different traditions and things that were written. And after writing 900 treaties about all of this, he came back to Lorenzo and all the other people in the garden, and he said, "Friendship is the end of all philosophy." Friendship.
The book is More Together Than Alone, Discovering the Power and Spirit of Community in Our Lives and in the World. If you'd like to learn more about Mark and his work, you can visit marknepo.com. Mark, in our final moments, you're going to be at the New York Open Center this October 26th and 27th. Tell us a little bit about that event.
Well, it's going to be a publication, event, and workshop, reading, conversation on Friday night. And on Saturday, on an all-day workshop that will go into greater depth around the book and all of the themes that it opens that we've been talking about. And I'm very excited to be starting to be able to bring this out and to be in community with others about it.
Yeah, Mark, this is just such an important topic, and I'm so happy that you've been here with us today to spend time talking about this. As we were saying, we're feeling so disconnected, and when we're disconnected, we tend to isolate, but that's not going to serve us or our world well. So I want to leave everyone with a thought that you had in your book. The health of all community depends on how well we treat each other, and it's really that simple. So thank you, Mark, for being here with us.
Oh, well, thank you, Joan. It's wonderful to be with you again.
We're going to take a short break. When we return, I'll be speaking with Colleen Alexander, a woman who was run over by a freight truck and lived to tell her story. Stay with us. You don't want to miss it. This is Conversations with Joan. We'll be right back.